Hello everyone, I am Jessica Delmar. In my last episode, I spoke about the wounded masculine and feminine energies and how they play out in the body as receptive and expressive energies. If you haven't yet listened or read that episode, be sure to go back and listen to that episode. You can also read it on my newsletter, just so that you can further understand this episode and the next episode as well. So in the last episode, since I spoke about the wounded energies, the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine, I got some questions asking about healing these wounded energies. Questions such as, how can I heal? I do recognize these patterns within myself of my wounded masculine and my wounded feminine, but how do I go about healing this? So I'd love to follow up, and I am dedicating this episode to speaking more about the healing and resolve of these wounded patterns. However, I do want to note that I specifically did not include any healing steps in my last episode because upon first understanding what these inner wounds are, you would most likely feel how it shows up for you in your own body and life, and that's the most important thing. And in fact, recognizing how these wounds are showing up for you is actually step one towards healing and resolving them. So the last episode, I really wanted that message to invoke a recognition or an awareness within yourself in terms of what wounds am I holding? What is my wounded masculine? What is my wounded feminine? How has it been showing up for me in all of these different ways in terms of my self-expression and my self-reception? And I wanted it to really get you understanding that in your own life. We have to first remember that everything is energy. When you are experiencing, for example, toxicity is what people are saying a lot. If you are experiencing toxicity in your life, usually a toxic masculine or a toxic feminine aspect, they are just manifested experiences of much deeper wounds, both within yourself and within the other person, places, or things or experiences. Recognizing how these inner wounds are showing up for you in relationships, jobs, friends, money, emotions, etc., recognizing this will show you how to pinpoint wounds as you are ready to work with them. The first thing that you need to know is that there's no need to address all of your wounds all at once, or try to seek to uncover all of the ways that you need to heal all at once. I always advocate for the now moment and working within what is unfolding for you right here and right now. Because each step that you take eventually is going to build into a bigger picture. So if you are, for example, too overwhelmed to even begin the healing process, because it can be very overwhelming, especially when there's so many different aspects and layers to healing, the best place to start is always right here and right now, exactly where you are, because it's always going to reveal and unveil for you exactly what you need to be working with, right? You want to unveil things exactly how they're supposed to be, exactly how they're supposed to unfold for you. So 10 steps ahead from right now, you don't want to try to figure out what those steps are if you haven't even reached it yet, if you haven't even prepared yourself, if you haven't even, gone through the first few steps in order to get there. So we always need to work with where we are right now, and that's going to unfold for you the bigger picture. Your now moment will always resonate in alignment with your intentions. Keep that in mind. Again, your now moment, which also incorporates presence, because you cannot be in your now moment if you're not present and conscious. But in the now moment, with your presence, with your conscious awareness, it will always resonate in alignment with your intentions. This is really powerful. And again, that presence within the now moment is where recognition is held. It's where you can recognize your life experiences, where you can recognize yourself in your life experiences and your life experiences in yourself. So if you have an intention to heal your inner wounds, which is what we're talking about, your now moment will show you what wound must be addressed first, here and now. It's similar to pulling a thread from a sweater. You start with a single thread, and then the rest of the sweater will eventually unravel piece by piece. So if you listen to my last episode, you should begin to understand how the inner masculine and feminine energies are connected, in terms of that masculine energy being the expressive energy and the feminine energy being the receptive energy. These are the pathways of energies that run to and from you that ultimately form this sort of boomerang of energy that is your energetic field. This is otherwise known as our toroidal energy field. Energy that you give is also received. Everything that you give also comes back to you and runs through you, while also affecting others around you. This is why it's so important to cultivate clear, open, and allowing pathways for both reception and expression. We all know what happens when a bathroom pipe, an artery, or the pores of your skin get clogged. It's never a pleasant outcome, but it's always going to signal a reminder to you to open, clear, allow, and release. Your entire body and well-being is affected by the energy that you carry. You are essentially a highly energized cell body, if you think of individual cells. And cells are always going to affect the greater body. So as an individual cell body, for example, you must maintain understanding of the energy that you're carrying. We all know what malignant, unhealthy cells are going to do to the body, and we know what healthy, cooperative cells are going to do to the body. Humans are no different with the energy that we're carrying. So let's talk about healing. There's 3 steps that came through at this point in time in order to move through our inner wounds and help open up those pathways. And it's becoming a little bit more clear to me at this moment that these 3 steps are more about opening up those pathways, getting the energy moving and flowing, unclogging those pipes, if you will, that became clogged due to the wounds. So in helping to open up those pathways, in clearing those pathways, the wounds are also going to naturally start to shift as well and find opportunities for healing. Those opportunities for healing is going to come directly through you, what you need at that time to soothe yourself, what you need at that time to heal specific things, what you need at that time to shift perspective or cultivate deeper understanding in order to shift the state of those wounds or shift the relationship you have to those wounds. So keep that in mind. Step 1 in healing your inner wounds is recognition. Recognize where your wounds are by realizing how your reality and now moment are showing themselves to you. Again, your now moment is always going to reveal to you what you need to work with. Part of recognition is also understanding the pattern of how masculine and feminine are connected and how they feed into each other as a cycle. So, for example, if you recognize a wounded masculine in your ability to express yourself freely, maybe you have a blocked throat chakra, you can't express yourself freely, you can clearly see that wounded masculine at work. But you want to take your recognition a step further by witnessing how that wounded masculine feeds into an inner wounded feminine. How is the inability to express yourself freely connected to the way that you receive yourself freely? Where are the wounds in your receiving aspect? Where in your life have you felt rejected in the way that you have been received that ultimately altered the way that you now express yourself and the reasons why you feel blocked in the way that you express yourself? So there's a lot that you can unpack or try to dive into in a single recognition of, hey, I'm having a hard time expressing myself. I feel blocked at my throat. I can't speak freely. Okay, well, you can dive into that. Recognize those wounded masculine patterns and how they connect back to any wounded feminine patterns that you're holding within yourself. So that's helping you kind of go full circle and understanding that fullness of the wound, not just half of it or part of it, is a large portion of the process of fully clearing out those inner pathways or pipes. It's like when you're cleaning out hair out of the shower drain. You can clean the hair right on the surface that presents itself that will, prevent the water from going down the drain. But you don't necessarily see that larger wad or ball of hair that's probably sitting 15 feet below in the pipes, just accumulating more and more until you need to call a plumber or something. You can't just see the wound of self-expression, that wounded masculine, and say, okay, now I need to work on getting myself more out there, speaking more of my truth, speaking more freely. Because when you see the wound of expression, if that energy is not flowing from an open feminine, then it's going to be like you're forcing yourself to heal that wound, like you're forcing yourself to get out there. You're forcing yourself to speak up. You're forcing yourself to be more expressive because that feminine energy is blocked. The feminine energy will open and inspire that masculine energy of expression. And in those ways, then you will naturally feel that need to express. You will naturally feel the openness to express. You will naturally feel more inclined to express, not like you're forcing it. So when you see the wound of self-expression, that masculine, begin to also recognize how it's connected to the wound of reception, the feminine, so that you're addressing the full circle, so the energy starts to move and starts to gain momentum upon itself and starts to enact your reception and expression in more of a natural, inspired way versus a forceful, like needing to make this happen, needing to heal this way. The good news about step 1 is it carries a lot of weight in your healing process. Being able to see, witness, hear, and recognize these wounded inner patterns, cycles, or loops is often potent enough to begin shifting self-behavior. It's kind of like the saying, once you see it, you can never unsee it, right? Once you recognize the pattern, you begin to see all of the ways that the pattern shows up for you. Whether on the expressing end or the receiving end, you see it in your daily life, how it's showing up for you. And this is why, again, what I was saying in terms of start with where you are right now. You pull one thread and eventually the entire sweater is going to unravel as it's supposed to unravel. This makes sense because once you recognize one thing that you need to work with right now, you begin to also recognize how everything else is connected to it. Not right now, but as you start to move forward in the process of healing, in the journey of life. Step 2 in healing your inner wounds is presence. Again, that saying, once you see it, you can never unsee it. That's a powerful reference or tool in self-recognition, but this only applies to conscious awareness. It only applies when it's accompanied with the intention to shift and change it. Many people can witness their wounds and the patterns and cycles of their wounds and say, it is what it is. That's just the way that I am. And go on with their lives, never changing anything, continuing to live in the well of their wounds. This is essentially unconscious behavior and unwillingness to change. But if you recognize your wounds from step 1, recognition, and you hold the willing intention to shift and change them because you want to align more with who you truly are, with who you know yourself to be, then you must maintain a conscious presence with yourself enough to witness those wounds whenever they appear for you and wherever they appear for you. This is because healing is never a one-time only event. It's part of your life experience, and there's a level of acceptance that must happen in terms of your healing journey, that it's part of your life experience. This is part of the ebbs that we go through in life and the flows that we go through in life. It's never a, can this be done right here and right now type of thing. It's more of a, how am I utilizing this wound or this area or path of healing for me as a self, as a spiritual self embodied in a physical body? How can I utilize that for my evolution? This is about evolution. It's about expansion. It's about opening into something new, into something different, into some place that you've never gone before. And we don't realize that we utilize so much of our wounds, so much of our trauma, so much of our suffering in order to get to those places of expansion, in order to get to those places of opening into new areas that we've never been to before. So recognize your healing journey as something that you move through. You move through experiences of healing just as you would move through experiences of joy or experiences of sadness. Unfortunately, the healing process does not go like this. Let me see my wounds and the patterns of my wounds and heal them all right now. Don't get me wrong, because this can absolutely happen. You can heal your wound right now. There are instances where the impact can be so significant that a large portion of healing can occur instantaneously. However, I understand that most healing for most people will probably not unfold that way, which is why I like to break this process down for those who are experiencing slower healings or the process of healings. On the other hand, some would say, fortunately, the healing process does go like this. That every time I see my wounds and the patterns of my wounds, let me understand it more. Let me infuse more ease into it. Let me neutralize and transmute it more and more and more and more through love, through care, through harmony, and through intention. Every time I do see my wounds and the patterns of my wounds. Being present is about being conscious enough to meet your wounds as they rise for you through triggers, etc., so that you can move through them with intention rather than rejection. That was a powerful one. Being present is about being conscious enough to meet your wounds as they rise for you so that you can move through them with intention rather than rejection. We don't realize how much we reject ourselves when our wounds rise through us because we're acting upon that opposition. And in acting upon that opposition or resistance, we are rejecting that energy. We're pushing up against it. Your conscious presence with your wounds as they rise for you is what helps bring the masculine and feminine internal energy together instead of them moving separately apart. The wounded internal energy flow is similar to opposite sides of magnets. They push each other apart, and there's no way that energy field is going to come together. So when you have wounded feminine and wounded masculine, they're pushing each other apart energetically. Therefore, there's always going to be an internal current of opposition, negativity, resistance, and dissonance. When the masculine and feminine internal energies begin healing and taking on their divine sacred essence, the internal current of energy begins to shift and come together. This is healing, step by step, getting these masculine and feminine energies to flow together in harmony, in unity, in resonance with each other, in the same direction, getting them to flow in the same direction. So it's like those two magnets getting into position where they can finally come together, where they cannot deny each other, where they are pulled towards each other. Their bond is strong and steady and sacred. When you move through your inner wounds with intention, you are changing your relationship with them and how you hold on to them in the body. When we're not conscious with our wounds, we give into the subconscious programming that they are, again, resistance, dissonance, and negativity. Therefore, we act accordingly when those wounds present themselves. It's similar to labeling a person before you even get to know them. Your label begins to shape who they are in your mind, and therefore it puts them into a box of who they are and how they're going to be in your perspective of them. When you move through your inner wounds with intention, however, you are changing your relationship with those inner wounds and how you hold them in your body. Essentially, you are saying, I will sit down with you. I will not run away from you. I will be present with you. I want to know and understand you. I want to shift this relationship so that my body is not holding on to you from a place of fear. And instead, I want this relationship with you to be from a place of love and ease. This leads to step 3. Step 3 in healing inner wounds is ease. Going through the process of step 2, which is presence, will naturally flow you into step 3, which is a place of ease, or cultivating a place of ease when it comes to your relationships with your wounds. In shifting that intention, the relationship that you have with your wounds, from fear and resistance into love and ease, then the wound itself will have to naturally shift and change too. So really it's about releasing the grip of the negative dissonant pattern itself that's been running on loop or subconsciously, and releasing the beliefs that you hold that enable or maintain that grip of the pattern, and then reprogramming that subconscious mind to be more in a state of ease and understanding surrounding those wounds instead of being in a state of fear, rejection, or resistance surrounding those wounds. So in a lot of ways, it's not necessarily, at least if you want to take this perspective, this path, this process of healing, is not so much about how can I forgive this person for making me feel this way or for instilling this wound within myself. It's not about the other person, but we can recognize what happened with this other person that created this wound to begin with within myself. This process is more about the wound that I have within myself. Regardless if it was created by this person or not, I'm still holding on to it. This person can still be in my life. Maybe they're not still in my life, but regardless, I'm still going to have this wound. And it's not about forgiving this other person. It's about shifting my relationship with this wound. It's about understanding why the wound got there in the first place, if we can, and then recognizing all the ways that we've maintained the occurrence of that wound in our life, and then recognizing, hey, I don't need to keep maintaining this wound. Recognizing, hey, I don't need to keep maintaining this wound, then allows you to start shifting things more in your favor and more in the way that you want things to be. And that's the process of shifting that resistance into ease. Because a lot of the wounds that we're holding are wounds that came from our childhood, for example. Why are we still holding on to these wounds and acting upon these same wounds and receiving things that open these same wounds over and over and over again when it happened 30, 40, 50 years ago for a lot of people, right? It's that recognition that I don't need to keep maintaining this wound, essentially. I can shift my relationship with this wound by shifting how I'm holding on to it. I don't need to go back 30 years and shift what happened that created this wound. I just need to work with where I am right now and my relationship with how the wound has grown within me. The shift comes when you say, I choose not to receive this energy in a dissonant way that keeps opening and reopening my wounds. To let those wounds heal, you must give it the space to soften and surrender into itself. This means not constantly pounding them with the spikes of dissonance when you receive it that way. Regardless, step 3 asks, how can I integrate more ease into this feeling? So even if your wounds are triggered, before that cycle or pattern can start up again in an unconscious way by expressing the same dissonant energy that you're receiving, you want to ask yourself, how can I be present with what I'm feeling long enough to shift how I'm feeling it from resistance into ease? How can I soothe myself? How can I soothe my wounded feelings? How can I see myself more clearly? And how can I see the other person, place, thing, experience more clearly? How can I recognize my wounds and not try to fix them, but try to understand them enough to get me into a place where I can have compassion, softness, acceptance, and love for myself and those involved? Because we have to understand that our wounds are not anything that anyone has ever done to us. Yes, that may have been how they got there, but it became us. At some point, it became us. And so there's nothing that we can do to go back again 30 years ago and shift the way things occurred to prevent the wound from happening. That can't happen. That's out of our control. The only thing that we can control is where we are right now. And if where we are right now, we are in a state where we have a wound, then that's a level of acceptance that you have to be able to receive. That's part of the receptive feminine energy. Receive that I have this wound that I don't need to keep pushing up against. I can have this wound and start to shift it, start to shift that relationship with it. And in shifting your relationship with that wound from resistance into ease, then everything surrounding that wound, including the wound itself, again, will have to change in alignment with your intention and in alignment with where you're headed, in alignment with where you're going in terms of your healing and in terms of your softness, in terms of your ease, in terms of your acceptance, in terms of your compassion, and ultimately in terms of your unconditional love. When you get to that place of unconditional love, everything wraps itself around the unconditional love. This includes your wounds, and it includes the reasons why those wounds are there in the first place, whether it's the people, places, things, experiences from 10, 20, 30 years ago. Those things are all wrapped up in the unconditional love. You receive your life experience, wounds and all, good things, bad things, positive, negative, as part of that unconditional experience. And when you hold a space of unconditional love in your here and now, in your beingness, in your central field of energy, then you direct that unconditional love outward and inward, and you wrap everything up in that unconditional love so that your wounds are self-expressed within that unconditional love, and the way that you receive things are self-received in unconditional love. What are wounds when they are expressed through unconditional love? They become unconditional love. And what are wounds when they are received as unconditional love? They become unconditional love. So everything starts to change. Your perspective of life starts to change. And our wounds are part of the things that shape our lives. And so the way that we perceive and witness unconditional love is going to be different for every single person. It's a different ingredient depending upon all the things that you've been through in your life. So that's what needed to come through for this episode. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all of your support. I'll see you in the next episode. Oneness, love, and peace be with you.